Hi everyone, we're going to analyze another graph of the rational function. This is number 6, and they're going to get a little harder as we proceed. The only reason this one's harder is because you have to factor the denominator, which we'll do right now. So that's going to be 6 over x minus 2, 3 times x plus 2. Alright, the numerator is p to the x. The denominator is p to the x. The denominator is going to be q to the x. The degree in the numerator is 1, and the degree in the denominator is 2. That means since my degree in the numerator is smaller than my degree in the denominator, I have a horizontal asymptote at y equals 0. This is already in lowest terms, so that means for step 5, we're not going to have a hole. The domain is when you set q to the x equals 0, so we're going to set this to 0. So our domain is all real numbers, but x cannot be 3, because that would leave the denominator as 0, and we cannot divide by 0. And also similarly, x cannot be negative 2. Therefore, our vertical asymptotes on step 5, we're going to have a vertical asymptote at x equals 3, and we're also going to have one at x equals negative 2. Okay, and we're going to solve for intercepts now. So here's my equation again. To get the x-intercept, you set this is your y to 0. When you cross multiply, you're going to get 0 equals 6, which doesn't make sense, so there's no x-intercept. And for your y-intercept, that's when x is 0. So this means y-intercept. I just cross out you're just letting these be 0. So basically, get 6 over 0 squared minus 0 minus 6. And that's going to leave 6 over negative 6, which equals negative 1. So there's no x, and we have a y-intercept at 0, negative 1. We're going to test for symmetry. So we're going to input negative x and see if we get r to the x, which would be symmetric to the y-axis, and negative r to the x. We're going to check if it looks like that. If that's the case, then it's going to be symmetric to the origin. So everywhere there's an x, I'm going to put negative x. Which gives us 6 over x squared plus x minus 6. So it's not our original, and it's not a negation of the original. So there's no symmetry. We already found the vertical asymptotes. We had to see our, since n was less than m, we had a horizontal asymptote at y equals 0. So we're going to see if the graph crosses or intersects our graph. When you cross multiply again, you're going to get 6 equals, you can write this in fraction form, 6 equals 0. It doesn't make sense, so no, there's no intersection. Or let's just write Rx does not intersect. Y equals 0. So that's going to help us graph. Now, if you want to put in the calculator, you can. I'm going to go ahead and pick intervals pick some intervals from negative infinity, comma, -2, -2 to 3, and 3 to infinity. And the reason I did that is because I have a vertical asymptote at -2 and I have one at 3. So I want to see what the behavior is from negative infinity to 2, and I want to see what's going on between -2 and 3, and I also want to see what is going on this side of the graph from -3 to infinity. And I'm going to pick some points here. Let's try to draw some straight lines. I pick as close to -2 as possible without being a fraction. So choose a number. I'm going to choose -3. If I can choose 0, I will. And then I'm also going to choose 4 here. I can't choose 3 because that's a vertical asymptote. So then I'm going to find, so these are my x's. I'm going to find my y's, or my value of r. So basically you're going to evaluate r of -3, r of 0, and r of 4. When you plug r of -3 in, you get 1. R of 0 is -1. R of 4 equals 1. Now, we got to determine location on the graph. Let's do this, location on the graph. Since this is positive, this is going to be above the x-axis. This is negative, so it's going to be below the x-axis. Positive, this is above. And then I'm just going to write down my points on the graph, which is -3, 1, 0, -1, which we already knew that one. That's your y-intercept. And 4, 1. And then I'm going to graph. So I'm going to change this to this. And our intercepts my asymptotes were x equals -2, x equals 3, and I have a horizontal at y equals 0. So y equals 0, x equals 3, and x equals -2. These are my asymptotes or lines. Now, I'm going to go ahead and plot my points I picked. I picked -3, 1. There's no crossing of the horizontal asymptote, so it's going to be like this. It's above the x-axis. Had a y-intercept at 0, -1. And you could also plug in 1 and you'll get -1. So something like this. This was 0, -1. My other point I picked was 4, 1. And this was above the graph, above the x-axis, sorry. And 4, 1. There's no symmetry to the y-axis. There's no symmetry to the origin. And that's all. The next one we're going to do has no horizontal asymptote. Thank you and have a nice day. Bye-bye.